I didn't know that, but I do believe that I've been in North Carolina and I think I've seen them there. Is that right?
They still may have a few, but the Atlantic and Pacific A&P stores were just as big and renowned as Walmart is today in a different perspectives. And I remember as a kid going back to Columbia, Tennessee. I remember as a child, white potential managers would come to A&P Food Store in Columbia, where my father was assistant manager, and my father would train them, and they would venture off to go back to the state of Kentucky or across the state of Tennessee, and they would be placed in management positions. Never did I ever hear my father sound mad or sound resentful. He never complained. So when his time arrived, pretty much in around the time that I became a student athlete at Vanderbilt, he was asked and he accepted to become the manager of the A&P Food Store right in front of Vanderbilt University's football stadium. So sometimes I would see him, sometimes I wouldn't, because when he would leave to go back to Columbia, which is 60 miles from Nashville, I was in the midst of still practicing late in the evening time in the fall time. So I wouldn't see him much until on game day weekends with he and mom. But it was grand, and I'm very proud of my father, proud of our heritage, our family heritage. But let me get back to the petroleum business. Now, another thing that I found out as well, and I didn't know this, the federal government, as well as state agencies and Fortune 500 corporations, also have an allotment, an opportunity that, hey, if you're the majority owner of your company, and you'd like to sell goods and services to us, we get taxed. The corporations and the government as well. We get tax breaks. Well, the government would get special stipulations for, as well as Congress and Senate and state legislators watching the process under law. But they give opportunities if they're buying goods and services from women, minorities, military veterans, disabled military veterans, and as well as LGBTQ groups out there. And after studying that, I decided, well, I'm going to apply myself to become certified as a minority business entity. Therefore, may give me some more allotted opportunities to get in line and do more business. And I did. When we had Desert Storm, I was supplying contracts under the Department of Defense in West Tennessee, as well as Huntsville, Alabama. So it really expanded. Unfortunately, my loan, which was under the Small Business Administration, SBA, that manages right now as we speak, the PPP loans, they had a Bernie Madoff type of small business lender that was actually a crook. It took for me to investigate, to identify these concerns, and to enlist the help from Vice President Al Gore's legal staff on down the chain to really get things started. And that took several years to finally find the former SBA investor federally fraudulent of taking millions of dollars from women and minority businesses here in the state of Tennessee. So I did that. That was an early phase of my life. And I had to move on with my life while waiting and testifying and and doing all the things to support the federal government, it takes years. And but life goes on. I went on, and I was an English teacher myself. Um, I was in marketing and computers. So I did a little variety of other things before I anchored myself again in another small business entity.
So we're going from Vanderbilt University to the NFL, Canadian League, NFL, oil, petroleum business, working on major lawsuits, whistleblowing, and we're up to another small business entity. This is Caleb Bradham with John Pointer, former NFL player for the Green Bay Packers, Cleveland, doing amazing work off the field, more important work off the field, perhaps, John, to be honest, even than you did as a player. Tell us about the next entity, please.
Well, the next phase was at a point that I wanted to, well, let me before I get into my further small business development, I was recognized and identified by state executives as my being an activist and a whistleblower in stopping millions in fraud and waste. And here's the clever reasons why they wanted me. African American contractors in Memphis, Shelby County, filed a lawsuit against the Tennessee Department of Transportation's contracting process for minority businesses. They were proclaiming that fraudulent companies were obtaining contracts. So the governor at the time was a Republican governor. I have nothing against the partisanship of it, but the governor at the time was Don Sundquist. His top administration, including his chief of staff, reached out to me and they said, John, we've read and heard nothing but good things about what you've done to assist the Department of Justice and the SBA in stopping millions in fraud. We need your help in the Department of Transportation, TDOT. I took that task on as a state director of Minority Business Enterprise Program. Ultimately, I found that the majority of those firms were illegally certified. So therefore, they were doing collectively about $700 million worth of contracts with the state of Tennessee. I had them removed. I did depositions. I did testimonies in the state courthouses. And after all that was said and done, the governor Governor Sundquist and his administration terminated me under their executive order. So won my legal claim, and moved on to the next phase of my life. And the next phase of my life, before I got back into small business, the new Democrat governor, Phil Bredesen at the time, wanted me to help out in Tennessee Housing Development Agency to help implement the Section 8 contract administration. Make a long story short on that, I helped the state of Tennessee stop the lawsuit of the African American contractors in Memphis because the division was cleaned. You know, I cleaned it dry. I wiped out all of the fraudulent, bogus companies and got that squeaky clean. So once I left Tennessee Department of Housing, Hurricane Katrina hit, and Governor Haley Barbour in Mississippi asked for me to come down and head up this is small and disadvantaged business program during the disaster recovery process. So I went down to Mississippi. I would go to Jackson, Mississippi, in the state capital, stay all week, leave out on Friday afternoon because my daughter was a star basketball player here in Nashville, so I couldn't miss a game. They ended up winning the state championship. But while I was in Mississippi, in Jackson, that's where I really thought I want to reach out and try to get NFL, especially former NFL players, former CFL players who live in this entire Gulf Coast areas, because I was allotted $11 billion to redevelop that Gulf Coast area. And I wanted to try to bring in ball players that either had companies or would like to invest in companies, legitimate companies, and try to help clean up the Gulf Coast area. And I would have my communications with the NFL League's office, the NFL Players Association, the CFL League office, the CFL Players Association. And that's where it really got in my mind and in my spirit that we need these guys and their families to really help, especially during disaster recovery process. So in 2006, 2007, in and around that time period is when I really thought that this needs to be really magnified. And of course I would get turned down. I've been getting turned down for a decade in trying to implement this thing. So that's where we are now as far as making sure that because of this disaster recovery that we're under right now, the pandemic crises, and further awareness of systemic racism economically as well as socially, I'm standing up to say, I think I could help. I think I could help in this criteria. And it's been slow, Kayla. It's been slow with the administration, and because you're still dealing with men and women who really don't understand it and really think, oh, you're just going to treat one special group. No. Under the federal laws, minority business programs assist white females, white males, brown skin, yellow skin, men and women who have social or economic issues that have not really been in the right lane to just become a small business entity. Like years ago, after I played pro ball, I didn't make there weren't millionaire contracts outside of maybe an all-pro guy. But by the same token, and yes, I had a college degree, but by the same token, under the federal law, because I'm an African American, and because of wanting to only use it to get until I'm mainstream into small business, into that arena, to get certified for a year or two, that's the mindset you got to have. It's not, well, I'm going to be a minority contractor certified for the next 15 years. No. And that's the problems that are out there. You've got ones that stay in that certification process, and then you've got unbelievers saying, we're throwing monies away. Why do we have these set-aside programs? So I'm trying to put levity into the fact of, hey, let them get jump-started into this small business arena. You got prime contractors that unless the federal government or the state administration says you've got to do business with these certified women-owned, minority-owned businesses, they won't do any business with you at all. And it's how you build the economic base. President Richard Nixon initially got this started when